Good morning and happy Monday. Today is the second Monday of October, and it is Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. Perhaps we could talk about the importance of celebrating such a day. But before we get there, and before we really get to the episode today, are you a sports fan, Pastor Eugene?
Yes.
So you know what happened on October 2nd.
Yes.
There was a huge race. Our friend Brandon, well, not really our friend, but our pal, he won his first Xfinity NASCAR race. And the big moment was celebrated as the crowd chanted, "Let's go, Brandon." Let's go, Brandon.
You're not going to explain to them what's going on?
No, we can. I think even from this simple quote, "Let's go, Brandon," there is a lesson to be learned, which we will learn after the intro. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast.
Welcome to the Dear Church podcast,
Where
we
we...
exist to fill your ears and your minds
Oh, yes.
with the study of God's Word.
Oh, no. The study of God. To see the world as disciples of
With the
Christ.
study of God's word.
I mean, that is definitely true. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Samuel.
I'm Eugene Kim.
And Pastor Eugene, I wanted to just talk about the Xfinity NASCAR race. It was a big one. Brandon Brown won his first one on October 2nd. Your thoughts on the race?
I think most people don't know anything about the race. They just know what happened after
Yeah.
in the post-race interview.
Yep. And after the race, as the newscaster was interviewing Brandon Brown, the first-time winner of the Xfinity NASCAR race, the crowd was cheering, or I guess jeering, and shouting some expletives concerning Joe Biden,
Yeah.
our current president. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, the reporter, as the crowd was shouting said expletive, said, "As you can hear the chants from the crowd, let's go, Brandon."
Yeah. And they were really saying something clearly different that you could hear.
Very clearly.
Yeah. And it's an expletive Joe Biden, right?
Yep.
Which we won't repeat here.
Yep.
If you want to know what it is, then just ask Sam. He'll say it in person.
No. I'll point you back to the podcast. But I think, it's just so funny at the same time sad.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she, meaning the reporter, she heard rightly. She was just changing it so that, maybe. Look, it's a sign of our times where we know that the media is spinning so hard and so much.
Yep.
That even something like very clear, we can't just say it for what it is, and we have to spin it to say it's something else, like "Let's go, Brandon." It's so ridiculous,
Right.
and you can denounce that. You can be like, "You shouldn't say that about the president," or "I disagree." But just to spin it the way it has, that's why there are now T-shirt sales with the "Let's go, Brandon"
t-shirts.
slogan. Yeah,
Yep.
the tag. And I think that was probably the funniest thing I heard this week.
Perhaps I'll title this episode "Let's Go, Brandon," because it has nothing to do with the NASCAR race, just like the chant. I also wanted to quickly talk about Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. There has been a lot of talk, a lot of debating on changing the title, the Columbus Day title, to Indigenous Peoples Day. And, people are actually adopting this new name for this day. But is this a good thing? What are we supposed to think about this?
I think it's complicated, yeah. Just like every hero or, person that has been, put on the pedestal, that has been respected or even, lauded as someone to emulate. we make statues of them. Every hero basically has a past. They're not perfect.
Yep.
It's mixed. It's gray. There's goods and there's bads. But there's a reason why we celebrate certain people. It's because through the muck of it all, because it is a sinful world, but through all this muck and mire and all this dirt and nastiness, they were able to find something good that is worth celebrating, right?
Right.
And so that's why we celebrate someone like George Washington, even though he
Mhm.
held slaves.
Right.
He also was our first president.
Yep.
He won, he led the nation into victory against England, right?
Yeah.
And so there are things that we can say this was bad, but this was also good. And so we should continue to remember someone like that. Christopher Columbus, I think, is no different, even though that he had so much, I guess, opposition to him sailing across. Because he thought, he didn't sail to discover America. I'm
Right.
pretty sure everybody knows
Yep.
this, right? You learned this in second grade. But he believed that he could sail around the world. And so instead of sailing around the whole world, he landed in the Americas, and he thought it was India.
Yes.
So that's why he called
the West
people
Indies.
Indians, right?
Yep.
But obviously they weren't Indians. They were people who we now know as American Indians or Native Americans, and I have that whole thing, about, I don't know, whatever native is supposed to mean, right? I'm
Right.
Native American, but yeah, that kind of thing. But
I'm not actually. I'm
Right.
native Korean.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But these are people that were there before Columbus. Is the
Yep,
point,
yep.
right? That's the point. And so these are people that were there, and then obviously there was some conflict that we all know of, and so it is kind of murky. I don't know. For me, it's if you want to celebrate it, that's great. If you don't want to celebrate it, don't celebrate it. But there are people who get this day off because we are remembering what got it started. Someone who had defied, orders that this was a stupid mission, but pulled up his funds and took a chance,
Yeah.
sailing across what he considered to be the world, and now
Yeah.
Europe got to discover the Americas.
Yes. What's that rhyme? Something, something, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Isn't that a rhyme that Americans learn?
I don't know.
This past week, we've seen some big headlines concerning the biggest social media giant, Facebook, and its little babe, Instagram. It's been an interesting week to talk about social media. So, Pastor Eugene, I wanted to just give us kind of an outline of what we will be discussing this morning. I wanted to try to do a couple different things. I wanted to talk about the news that we've seen, especially with the whistleblower on the 60-minute interview. So we'll talk about that for a little bit. And perhaps we'll talk about the possible concerns that Christians may have of social media or should have of social media. And then hopefully discuss how we can wisely use social media as Christians, and add on perhaps how we can teach our kids to use it wisely as well. So that's kind of what we will be
Sure.
discussing this morning. Last week, there was a 60-minute interview, and I believe multiple articles through the Washington, what is it? Washington
Wall
State?
Street.
It was
You're
Wall Street
mixing up
Journal, right?
Washington Post and
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal. Okay.
I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, correct?
Mhm.
And there's a 37-year-old former Facebook product manager, Frances Haugen, who worked on civic integrity issues, and she revealed documents that show that Facebook knows that its platforms are used to spread violence, misinformation, hatred, and the company has tried to hide that evidence. And this is all stuff that I've garnered from articles online. I guess the big thing is that Facebook was aware of these problems that cause harm, but they just would rather push their products for their own profit. But your initial thoughts about just this situation with the interview, the whistleblower, everything that's happening with Facebook, could I just ask what your thoughts are?
My general thoughts.
Your general ones, yes.
I mean, it shouldn't be any surprise if you hear me preach or even talk. I am not a fan of social media in general.
Right.
And so I think it does more harm than good. We could use it for good, but we have not been. but it doesn't mean I don't think we should shut it down or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
That's not my point. It's can you learn to use it for good without using it for the evil that many people do? And if not, then maybe get off of it. You yourself.
Me.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Personally, if you can't use it well,
Yeah.
you're getting angrier, or we know for a fact now that at least 1 in 3 teenage girls feel worse about themselves.
Yep.
But
Yep.
all that stuff is like, I mean, 1 in 3 teenage girls probably feel bad about themselves looking at magazine covers too.
Yeah.
But would you say continue to look at magazine covers then? You
Right,
like
right,
continue
right.
to, or maybe stay away from those magazine covers, right? Develop a strong identity in Christ first. Have really good grounded relationships with older Christian women that can teach you what it means to be a woman. And I would say the same thing for men, right?
Yeah.
What it means to be a man, you got to learn from a wiser, older Christian man, right?
Right.
And so these are things that we have known. So Facebook and all this other social media stuff is not new per se. It's just more prevalent because everybody has social media. Maybe
Yep.
if
Yep.
you grew up in the 70s and 80s and you're reading Cosmo, maybe you can just stay away from Cosmo. But it's like, yeah, today is like every single teenage girl has a Cosmopolitan magazine in her hand and is constantly looking at it. And so
Yeah.
that's the rough part for me. We know that, and I talked about, Browder's book, right? About how when she worked in Cosmo, she purposefully changed up the stories because all her editors told her to, and that's exactly what Cosmopolitan was doing. Was
Uh-huh.
there were no women that fit the description that they wanted to put out. That picture of a woman that was independent, working alone in the city, making money on her own. There was nobody like that.
Yeah.
And so they had to make up stories of women because they wanted to reach that place. And lo and behold, here we are where we have all these women that think that for me to be successful is to go out there and make it in the world.
Mhm.
And perhaps even the option of being a homemaker is something looked down on. And so, there's that. It gets a little complicated with the whole situation of the two income trap, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so now, if you are married, then it's going to be nearly impossible, especially if you live in this area,
Mm.
to survive on just one income
Mm.
unless that one person is making a bucket load of money, right?
Right.
And so that's really rough. But yeah, in the 70s and 80s, when they did the surveys, most women went to college and they loved it because they wanted the option of going to work if they wanted to. But most of them, the vast majority, by me saying most, there is almost literally no woman that just wanted to work and be single. Um, they wanted to stay home with their kids, and if they had the option, and if they wanted to work, they wanted the option. That's why they thought that higher education experience was so good for them. Now, this is just talking about the women in the 70s and 80s, okay?
Yeah.
And so that culture has now shifted, and we know that it has a lot to do with what media at the time was shaping and forming, that misinformation that you were getting from even popular magazines like Cosmopolitan were shaping women into thinking like, if you really want inherent worth, you better put yourself out there in the workforce and earn it, right? And you being a mother, you being like a homemaker, that's like low. That's like for women who don't have the ability, they can do that. So that's the kind of imagery that was being set up. But we know that, this is not true. You look at the Proverbs 31 woman, she does it all, right?
Yeah.
But, homemaking is a big part of her success, right?
Mm.
Not a small part, not an optional part, but it's a big part of who she is. And so those are things that we get to learn as we continue to study the Bible too, as it pushes and, comes up against social media and social media now.
The next day after that interview aired, on Monday, there was an outage at Facebook, I think for hours. And Facebook commented on it saying that it was an internal issue. I think there were some issues with routers, with network traffic that went wrong.
Mhm.
But Facebook was out Instagram was out for hours, and there were funny little things that happened. About an hour after the outage was announced, uh, Twitter, the actual Twitter company's Twitter, tweeted, "Hello, literally everyone," and people kind of had fun with that. A
Hmm.
lot of memes came out. I thought this one was funny. It said, Facebook comes back online after grueling 6 hours of vaccine advice only being available from doctors and scientists, which I
Hmm.
thought was uh, quite comical. But, this wasn't funny for everybody. There was a lot of money that was lost because Facebook and Instagram have become a center of commerce for many companies. And so I think this was quite a big event that happened on Monday.
Yeah, it's pretty big. That's why it's a little more complex now
Hmm.
because it's not just media, it's not just a magazine.
Yep.
People's livelihoods are tied to Facebook. Your ad revenue, your small businesses, they're all tied to Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so in some estimates, people say that for every minute Facebook would be down, this is compared to last year's just ad revenue, okay?
Uh huh.
For every minute Facebook is down, they would lose about $160,000. So for the multiple hours, you would lose maybe $100 million
Yep.
that it was down. But this is not just based off on ad revenues. Again, this is about even the small business that makes its living off of Facebook, where every minute does count, every hour does count, because
Hmm.
that's a loss in revenue for their store. So yeah, it is a little complex. I was talking about the social aspect of Facebook, but
Yeah.
there's also a business aspect that Facebook has a lot of what do you call it, real estate in.
A lot of foot traffic, as they say.
Who says that?
I want to quickly just go back to Frances Haugen, who was the former Facebook product manager. She talked about an algorithm and how Facebook and Instagram, they use this algorithm where I guess the posts with the most amount of visits, the most amount of reaction, whether it's likes or reposts or whatever it might be, those are the ones that are posted onto your feed, and they generate the most amount of whether it's hatred or whatever it might be. And even though Facebook knows that it's harmful, they still use it because it gives them profit through advertising.
Okay, first of all, Hagen is not a whistleblower. That's something everybody should understand.
Uh huh.
There's literally nothing that she said that wasn't something that we didn't know before.
Right,
Facebook
right,
already
right,
had all this information out there that people knew.
right.
We already knew that Facebook knew in their, research and findings that they had content that was harmful for teenagers, and they still continue to do this, right?
Yeah.
The whole point is when she says this is harmful stuff, by what metric is it harmful? Okay.
Uh huh.
And so who gets to decide what is harmful and what is not? The fact that, look, we all know that as soon as she decided to be a whistleblower, she has like reps, she has agents that are pulling for her and getting her all these interviews. What whistleblower have you seen that has this kind of pull, like the
Right.
minute they get out? So
Right.
that alone has made people very skeptical about this. And secondly, like I said, there is literally no new information that she has put out there that we didn't know already, that was already available to the public.
Right.
So that being said, um, for me, this whole Facebook whistleblower thing is just hot garbage. It's just yeah. If we get into it, it's going to get even more political. Meaning, like
Uh huh.
the agents that are representing her are people that represented, like formerly Jen Psaki, who is the press secretary of Joe Biden. So
Mm.
these are not people that are she's not standing alone. Look at me. Look how bold I am. When asked, there's a guy who heads a site called Veritas Forums, is it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. He literally has tons of whistleblowers out there. Like most notably today is he caught a bunch of people from Pfizer saying all this stuff about the vaccine on tape, but
Yeah.
zero traffic. Like no one hears
Interesting.
about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Someone asked him, did you ever get any invitation from any of your whistleblowers to be on any news network?
Yeah.
And he said, no, no. Like, no one gives anybody like a whistleblower time of day. So why? So the things that you would consider is, or you would think about is, why this person? Why now? I got to hear a little bit about her testimony too. And she basically said, like, she doesn't want Facebook to be dismantled.
Yep.
Like, it's not an oligopoly. She doesn't want it to be dismantled like, the phone companies were, but back in the 90s and the 2000s. But she wanted, an oversight committee just for Facebook, and she wouldn't mind heading it herself. I'm like, come on. I mean,
Yeah.
like, seriously. So, yeah, for me, this is just hot garbage. It's not newsworthy, and yet it's being pushed on every single media, like news platform out there.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I don't buy it. I just think that this is all political. It's just games for power.
Yeah.
But my point is that when they need an oversight committee to make sure that they don't put out harmful information. My concern is, what do you know, Hagen, about harmful information? Well,
Yeah.
like, what do you consider to be harmful? I listened
Right.
to some of her interview, and she was saying things like she lost her conservative friend over this misinformation. It's like, what does that mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
did they defriend her, unfriend her,
right.
or did they die? Like, you don't even know. And then
Yeah.
if you were a real reporter, you would have pushed that in 60 Minutes. It's like, what do you mean you lost a friend? Did they die, or did they just unfriend you? What are you talking about? And I would
Yeah.
have pushed that instead of just moving on with how bad Facebook is, right? But yeah, who gets to decide what's harmful? Who gets to decide what's good? How do we set up what's quorum or what's like basic etiquette for debate in a social square, like a public square, right?
Yeah.
Who gets to decide that? Because would you trust Frances Hagen on this? I doubt many people would want to, especially after the interviews that they've watched her do. So who gets to decide? Do you want the government to decide which party is in power gets to control? So this is a very complex and difficult question to answer. But when people are making it out to be as simple as it is, that's what's a little troubling to me. And I don't think it's a simple answer. I
Yeah.
think that should be open for debate. So we need to debate, and we can't empower one person or just one government agency to decide top down what is going to be harmful, hateful, and then block it.
Now I want to move on to the concerns that Christians may have about social media. So pretty much everybody, or almost, if not everybody, most people are on social media in one way, form, or another. Whether it be Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat or what are the other ones? Twitter,
Twitch.
Twitch, yeah, streaming, video games, whatever it might be, YouTube.
You hear about that guy from Young Turks Twitch? He bought like a multi-million-dollar house.
What's Young Turks?
It's a left-leaning,
Oh,
like, yeah, what do you call it? News commentating site.
interesting. But yeah, I think everyone's on social media in one way, shape, form, or another. So I wanted to talk about how we should be using social media as Christians. And first, I want to talk about the concerns that we might have. And these are from the author Paul David Tripp. And he talks about the concept of authority and how now anybody can have an authoritative voice, even those who are not trustworthy. Often within the arena of Christianity, and I say that in parentheses because there are wolves in sheep's clothing. But under the pretense of being Christian, using Christian terms and themes, they share messages that are anti-gospel, and I think it's easy for Christians to fall into this. And so I think that's one of the things that people should be concerned with, the validity of the things that they see. But I guess also with consuming content as well. Could you just kind of give us your thoughts on the concerns that you have for our church members as they consume content on social media?
Sure. I mean, I preached on it, but I'll say it again, is if you have a child, I would monitor that child's, and, kind of oversee what that child is looking at
Yeah.
and, absorbing, taking in, being molded by. Because social media is a huge, huge thing. And we talked about the Wall Street Journal, did we? We did talk about it,
The
right?
Washington Street Journal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Washington Street Journal.
Yeah.
They had a report out. The journalists found out that even though TikTok knew that all this stuff was happening, there was very little being done. And like kids as young as 13 would get exposed to sex, drugs, even where to buy drugs, which is
Yeah.
pretty insane.
Yep.
And so these sites know it's about not just monitoring and censoring or filtering. I think bottom line, it needs to go to the parents. If you're a parent, you have to be able to monitor what your kids are looking at, and you have to know. We talked about Finsta.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. The oldest member of our staff, I believe, had no idea what Finsta
What a Finsta was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. You could tell in his face, and he's the one with the oldest kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, Finsta is something that kids do and to get away from their parents. You need to know that your kids probably have a Finsta account.
Yeah.
But there are people who know about the dangers of social media that are in social media, just like Steve Jobs.
Yes.
And all these tech gurus would not let their kids touch like an iPad or a phone
Really?
until they become like 18 or something like that. No joke.
So they know.
Same thing with people that are very influential on social media. When they have
Yeah.
kids, they're like, I'm not going to let my kid even have a social media account until they're like 17, 18. They
Yeah.
seriously say that. And these are people that make their living off of social media because they know how much harm social media can do, but is also doing. And so, look, whether as a parent you're going to let your kids use social media or not, I think it's up to the parents. You should do it wisely. You should do it with discernment. You should do it with prayer. You should do it with counsel. You should do it with biblical knowledge, right? But you should know what's going on
Yeah.
in these social media sites when
Yeah.
you continue to scroll video from video to video. If they're like a Twitch watcher, they're watching someone on Twitch
That's a
and they're
big
just
one.
paying them money.
Yep.
That's a weird thing to me. For
It's
me,
become
that's
weird.
that's very voyeur-esque. Yeah, it's weird. And so, but there are people like that Young Turks commentator who had made millions, I think around $30 million, and he bought a multi-million-dollar home with it. But he's a self-proclaimed socialist communist, so that's weird. But anyway, those are things that we should be aware of. Now, if you're just an adult and you're worried about yourself, then yeah, I think you need to monitor what you're watching just as much as you would monitor your child's. If you're married, then you should be able to share everything that you look at in your social media account with your spouse, right?
Yep.
And if you can, you have to wonder why. Why can't I share this with my spouse? Why can't I share this aspect of what I'm viewing, watching, just absorbing with someone that I'm married to? So I hope you do. I think one of the things that I recommended is if you have, let's say, an Insta account, then show your search bar to your spouse. That search page that they have.
Yes.
You show it to your spouse and have them look through it, just to be like, oh, this is the stuff that I look at. These algorithms are crazy. They know what you like. They keep
Mhm.
track of how long you look at a video or stay on a
Wow.
page. And they can keep track of, how fast you flick through a certain content or stay
Interesting.
on that content. And they
Yeah.
record it in their system. So they have data on you. And don't even get me started on this data mining that they have, right?
Yeah.
But they have all this data on you and they know exactly what you like and what you don't like. And why is that? And people are like, oh, it's just to show you ads. Yeah, but bottom line is they want to know what makes you tick so that they can manipulate you into buying certain things or doing certain things. That's the point. That's what data mining is for. And so I personally hate that. I actually don't use Facebook at all anymore because I hate Facebook. And Instagram I just kept because most of our church people are on it. So,
Yep.
you can look through the Insta stories. And secondly, I get to look at a bunch of golf swings. So I follow some golf pages.
Yeah.
And then I remember you sharing about how you look at lifting pages. But even
Yeah.
some lifting pages are a little weird, right?
So I was just going to say, I think the advice that you gave, showing your Explore page to your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend or pastor, would be interesting. My wife would see a lot of bodybuilders. Speaking of bodybuilding, the Olympia is happening. We're recording on Thursday. It's going to be happening on Saturday, and I really am hoping that Chris Bumstead wins. However, going back to the topic, you talked about just the content that we're consuming, and I think a lot of times people are exposing themselves to things that may not have physical ramifications, but definitely spiritual ramifications. And I know that oftentimes it might be easier to, I guess, avoid the sexual or violent content. But even in this quote unquote innocent posts, I think there is sin lurking. I think sometimes we could find ourselves being discontent because, I mean, when you're posting on Instagram, you're posting stuff that is maybe like the highlight of your summer, right? Or the highlight, everyone posts the best version of themselves or the best themselves on Instagram. And so I think oftentimes for us looking at these posts, there could be a sense of discontentment, sense of jealousy, maybe covetousness, bitterness, or anything like that, which I think are just as dangerous as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's look at the word to kind of guide us into this kind of thought process. If you could look up Philippians 4, 7-9. 8 is a very famous one. And once we get to 8, I'm sure it's going to be very familiar, but I think 7 and 9 are very important too.
This is Philippians chapter 4, verse 7-9. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you.
Number one, it's the God of peace or the peace of God that will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So one of the things that we should be doing is guarding our hearts.
Yep.
Because that's what the peace of God does. So if you have the peace of God, your heart will be guarded, and that's a promise that we have. And the next verse, which is the very famous passage, is that's whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, commendable, all these things are excellent, then we should think about those things. Those are the things that we should do. But why? And that's why verse 9 is important. So that we could practice that, so that we can put it into action. If we're wasting our time, and some people are like, well, what's so bad about looking at this and that? Well, is it good? Is it pure? Is it noble? Is it commendable? Is it holy? And if
Right.
it's not, they're like, well, why does everything have to be that? You might respond,
Yeah.
because whatever you see, whatever you hear, you're going to start to put into practice. And so if it's not good, if it's not pure, and you keep on putting that into your system, what you output will also be unpure. It won't be holy. It won't be commendable. It won't
Yeah.
be noble. And that's the important thing. So in social media, maybe there's like a 90, 9-to-1 ratio of bad stuff versus good, right?
Yeah.
For me, that's a little rough. If it's 9-to-1 ratio, I mean, you can tell me what you personally think is a good ratio, right? That you can tell. Whatever's useless then, if it's just something that you haha at, is it really that important that you have an account
Right.
on Instagram to look at something that'll make you haha?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think you can laugh at a bunch of other things. I think you can laugh with a cup of coffee with a friend, but you don't necessarily need to see, I don't know, some dude tripping and falling into the river. I don't know, whatever it is, right? And then you go, it's hilarious, and then you share it, right? Is that the most important thing about
Right.
social media? Is that where you want to spend all your time? And I hope the answer is no. And
Yeah.
you want to spend your time on the excellent and praiseworthy things.
Yeah, I've actually heard somebody, say the reason why I'm on TikTok is because TikTok is funny. Your comment just now reminded me of that because, for anyone that has a TikTok or knows about TikTok, there's a lot of inappropriate content on TikTok, a lot. I don't have a TikTok, but just from what I've seen, in friends, TikToks, and just Instagram. You know how they post TikTok sometimes. There's a lot of inappropriate stuff on there, and so at that point, you kind of have to wonder: is it really worth it to have a couple laughs to flip through all this inappropriate stuff? And I think you bring up a great point, and that's something that we definitely have to reflect and think on. And I want to get to how we can wisely do these things in just a moment, but in other things that should concern us as Christians, and I think is in the comments. The comment section is where you bring the popcorn, and the comment section is where you immediately go to before the bots. And, I think people communicate in ways that they would never do if they were face to face in a room. I think even Christians will communicate in a way that's not the best. That's not the most edifying. That's not the most encouraging. And people might think, well, they're gonna never know I'm a Christian. They're not really hurt. That's just how comment sections are. But I would even argue that that type of communication is harmful to your heart. What are your thoughts about this?
About the bots? The bots are crazy. They're
The
everywhere.
bots are insane. Yeah, especially in the sports pages.
Yeah.
They're insane.
This is something that, so when I first noticed that in the comment sections, there are just a million bots, I
Yeah.
tried to one by one report them. And then they would respond back saying, we didn't find any illegal content. So they're not doing anything about these bots. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, I try to block them one by one. If you, in Instagram, you can just slide left and then you could press block.
Uh-huh.
But that will take all day. So in the end, it's just better
Yeah.
not to look at the comment section.
Yeah.
But it's insane. There's just so much garbage
Yeah.
in these sites. So whatever gets picked up, there's just going to be a bunch of garbage now. And now we know that bots are a huge problem
Yep.
in our social media content.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forget the other question that you asked.
I guess just the danger of the comments, and just maybe perhaps the heart as we comment on different things.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's true. What you said was true. No one would say to me probably what they would say in a comment section personally. You know what I mean?
oh, definitely.
So in the comment section, you can say this, but then if you came up to my face, would you say that? And I would say the same way. I can say what I think is the most loving way to respond to someone in the comment section,
Yeah.
but it probably will not be taken nearly as well as if I took the person aside and I talked to him or her separately than in the comment section, because comment section, of course, is for public consumption.
Yeah.
And even when I had that back and forth with that blue check we talked about, right?
Yes. Verified.
Yeah, it's better that I had talked to this person personally
Yep.
than just the back and forth on, the messaging system. I still think that wasn't the most ideal way,
Uh-huh.
but maybe I'm never gonna meet this person in real life. So, might as well get out what I can, and then hopefully God will change his heart, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's just less ideal. If you know the person, then obviously face to face is better. If you don't know the person, then I'm not sure why you would comment. I would, probably think twice about commenting. Even if it's like, oh my gosh, your baby's so cute or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't see how that benefits anybody, period.
Yep.
Because a pedophile can do the exact
Ugh.
same thing.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like glowing over a pedophile's remarks. That's weird to me. Like, if I don't know you and you make any kind of comment is suspect, right? That's weird. I just, in the world today, I would just be very careful about absorbing any of the content.
Yeah. They're called keyboard warriors or keyboard crusaders. That is what they're called. This might be another aspect of this whole comment conversation, but I find it very, very interesting what girls comment on other girls' pictures of themselves. It's very fascinating to me. They all love each other. It's all ILY, bestie, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, yes, queen, all this other, oh, oops, you dropped your crown, queen, stuff like that, which I find to be extremely interesting.
You sound like a big hater right now.
No. I only, I came upon this phenomenon maybe 4 years ago as I was doing youth ministry, and I would just look at the comments, and it would just be just words of affirmation, but it really wasn't. I don't know what it was, and they do it to each other to float each other up, to gas each other up, as they say. But it's just really nothing. It's just
So what do
vanity.
guys do then if girls do that?
Guys don't really comment, I don't think.
You don't think so?
Yeah, but it's just really interesting. I mean, on one side you have people hating in the comments, and on the other side you have people just complimenting, lifting one another up, not in an edifying way, but in kind of a very vain way, which I found to be really interesting as well. I can't say one is better than the other, but it's just something to think about.
Did you want me to say how insightful that was?
No, I guess there's really no reason for me to say that, but I just really wanted to say it, and it's confusing to me.
I
And
just wanted to say for the record that Sam's a hater.
no, 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 I'm not hating. I'm just analyzing. It's
I
interesting.
mean, yeah. I mean, of course, there's that aspect of that. I think what you're trying to point out is in ways that manifest, there are ways that are manifested that show our covetousness. And it could be in the whole, I think you said it without saying it, is in the fake kind of affirmation that people
Yeah,
give online,
yeah.
right? Some people really mean it though. I
No,
mean,
some people
yeah,
do
I think, and
definitely.
then secondly, I think some people really think they mean it, but they don't. And I think some people are really severely, like 1 in 3, right? One in
Right,
three out of young women,
right,
they are really suffering from image issues, depression, and a lot of psychological damage that will also comment in that similar fashion. But it will, after they comment, it'll make them feel worse.
right.
Bottom line again is just because you say something in the comments, it doesn't mean anything. In fact, it could mean the opposite of what you're really saying. And now, I think a big part of dudes is trolling. I thought you might mention
Oh,
that, but
oh,
yeah,
very
dudes
true.
troll all the
That's very,
time.
very
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, forgot
So
about the trolls.
yeah, like if you see a comment from blue checkmark Sam Yang, and you go and you see him write Yas Queen or something like that, he's trolling. Yeah,
Me no man. Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, those are things that I think we should continue to keep in mind. Comment section is not real. It's better if you don't read through it. But I guess people can't help themselves because it is quite entertaining and amusing, huh?
Yes, yes. Sometimes you look forward to the comments more than the actual post.
Sometimes you don't even read the post, you go
No.
straight to the comments.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, so just something for us to reflect on and be concerned with because we are in the concern section. Last but not least, the stewardship of time, I believe, is something that Christians should be concerned with as we're using social media. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, if I may do that, on Monday, last Monday, when the social media went down for a couple hours,
Mm,
I actually checked my Instagram
mhm,
3 times, forgetting that social media was down.
mm,
Um, so, I'd have a free minute here. I'd check Instagram. Oh, shoot, I forgot it's down. I go to
mhm.
the bathroom, have a quick minute, open Instagram. Oh, shoot, I forgot Instagram. And I did that 3 times. And that day, I realized this cannot happen any longer. And so I actually deleted it from my home screen because I've just noticed
Wow.
how quickly I press Instagram without even thinking that I'm pressing Instagram,
Mhm,
which is something that blew my mind. I was like, why am I on Instagram without even realizing that I'm on this app? And so for me, that was a huge change for me. But I think, just stewardship of time. You mentioned this in your sermon multiple times. What do we do the first thing we wake up in the morning? Do we pray? Do we
mm,
read the word? Do we thank God? No, we check our Instagram
mhm,
or we check our emails.
mhm,
On the toilet, we do the same thing. And I think, something big that I've noticed is how much time you lose by looking at Instagram where you could be having fellowship and interacting with others. That's something huge that I've realized. How people now in rooms sit around a circle and look at their phones and talk to whoever is not in that room.
yeah.
It's just so interesting to me. But yeah, I think stewardship of time is a huge one.
Yeah, I heard one pastor, I forget who put it this way. I think he approached it from like the opposite end, where if you spend this many hours on social media, I challenge you to read the Bible that many hours too.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're spending 6 hours looking at like Insta in a day,
Yeah.
then you should spend 6 hours reading the Bible. Can you do that? And if not, then you know that there's a problem,
Yep.
right? There's definitely a problem with your media consumption in
Yeah.
that sense. So media is a medium, right? It's from medium.
Yeah.
You're getting it from some other source. And so in a sense, the Bible is a media, right? It's a medium. It's how God speaks to us, and how much are you being exposed to the Word of God every day, and how much are you thinking about it? How much are you praying through it and talking about it? So I think that was a good challenge that I heard somewhere. I personally would think that if you have more than one social media account, that's something that you would see as more than additive. I think it's exponential. But even if you put it as an additive thing, so it's not like, oh, Facebook and Instagram are different. They're the same thing.
Right.
Instagram and Twitch are
Right.
different because they perform different functions.
Yeah.
In a sense, they're the same thing. And if you think about it as the same thing, and then how many hours a day do you put into consumption? That means you're just consuming and consuming, and you're not really discerning what you're consuming.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that no one watches movies or shows with a critical eye because they're too tired. Like, I was watching this show the other day with my wife, and I was just pointing out how much liberal content there is now. It was a police show about defunding the police. It was really weird, right? And so, and those are all these, there are all these weird things that are coming out. But then for most people, and I think after a while, my wife got a little tired of it, like most people.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I just want to watch the show. I just want to see if it's entertaining. And so people don't really, on average, discern. You don't sit there and you don't watch like a Marvel movie thinking, what is it really trying to say to me? That kind of thing, right? You just want to be entertained.
Right.
And yet many times there is a message behind it. They are trying to pull you this way or that way. Bottom line, what I wanted to say was people have a more critical eye when they read the Bible than they do when they watch TV or consume social media. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
If you have a critical like lens when you're reading the Bible, I would say do that for every media platform then. I dare you. And then you'll see that what you consume, you'll be surprised by. It's like, wow, I consume stuff like this, huh?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Thank you for that. And, we just kind of went over some of the concerns, and these are just some of the concerns I believe that Christians should have, perhaps some things that they should think about as they are consuming social media. But I want to move on to how then we can wisely use social media as Christians. Like, how can we be most glorifying to God in the way that we use this tool that we've been given? And I think, perhaps the concept of authority could be an easy fix. Just do the research. Just don't believe everything that you read. Do your own research. And that's kind of what we've been saying with all the current event episodes that we've had is do your own research. Make sure that whatever you're reading, because every news is biased. And so read across the board and do your own research. And I think that was an important piece of advice that you've given us in the past episodes. But I guess in terms of consuming content, posting content, writing comments, and stewarding our time, how can we be most glorifying to God in the way that we do these things? Because I don't know if everyone's just going to stop using social media.
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever going to happen now.
Yeah.
I really think it's a part of our ecosystem.
I think so.
And so people, like we have young people growing up that, used to be, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a CEO.
Yep.
But even before that, what do you want to be when you grow up? You used to be a doctor and lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And then half a generation passed and the kids were like, I want to be a CEO. I remember doing this children's program for a church that I served at. And one of the questions were, what do you want to be when you grow up? And one person wrote CEO, another person wrote, I want to make a lot of money. And the third person wrote, I want to be a paleontologist. So you don't see that often. Like, like a elementary schooler saying, I want to be a paleontologist. But
What did
No,
you want to be when you were younger, by the way?
probably a doctor, but
Ah,
yeah, it's typical. But now it's like people want to be an influencer on
yep,
social
yep.
media. That's one of the
Twitch
things that you'll
streamer.
see. People want to be an influencer without knowing what content to produce. I think we've got it backwards.
Yep.
If you have content, then you should produce it. But you shouldn't be an influencer so that you can produce content. People like that will have the most stressful, unfulfilled lives ever.
Hmm.
There was this one guy, right? What's his name? Paul Hogan. What's his name? The guy.
Logan, Paul Logan,
Paul Logan. Yeah,
and Jake Logan. Yeah.
Jake Logan. So Paul Logan became a boxer. Logan Paul.
I'm so sorry. It's Logan Paul and Jake Paul. I'm so
Is
sorry.
it
Yeah.
who's the guy that became a boxer?
Both of them. They
Both of
both
them.
box now.
Who boxed Mayweather?
Jake Paul.
So it's Jake Paul. It was
Okay,
Paul.
yeah.
Okay. They said which is harder. They interviewed him. They said which is harder, being the influencer or being a boxer. And he said without question, it's an influencer because he had to come up with content like every week or something like that, right? And I listened to that, and he was sharing how how being a social media influencer was so much more stressful to his life than
Mm,
training for one of the biggest fights in the world of that day, right?
yeah.
To me, that says something. To me, that says if you live your life backwards, you're unnecessarily going to get tired and burnt out, worn out, whatever it is. Yeah, when you put the cart before the horse and then you wonder why you're not moving like you should, it's because you got things backwards.
Mm,
If you have something to give and share the world, then yeah, you should do it and you should use these media platforms. But you shouldn't go onto a media platform thinking that I need to show something to the world or I have something to show the world without developing your skills. And so when you're a young person, you should really focus on honing your skills, developing your talent, training, doing the work, doing the hard work every day of developing that talent that God has given you.
yeah.
And if it's some kind of instrument, if it's some kind of sport, athleticism, intelligence, whatever it is, you develop that. And then the mediums will work for you rather than you working for the mediums.
Right.
Because we've gotten it backwards, people want to grow up to be influencers.
Yep,
That
yep,
is
yep.
completely backwards. And to me, that's the saddest thing that you could really want to be. I can't stress that enough. If you have no content to share, then develop on building your character and your skill set. Forget about sharing. Sharing comes after.
Right. I'm sorry. It's Logan Paul. I was
Logan
wrong.
Paul.
Yep. It's Logan Paul. So I mean,
Didn't I say that? Or did I say Paul Hogan? Yeah.
Paul
Logan
Logan.
Paul.
Yeah.
That's it.
Logan Paul is the guy that boxed Floyd Mayweather. But I'm just wondering, a lot of people do post things. A lot of people post posts. A lot of people post stories. Sometimes we'll post stories of our devotions. Sometimes we'll post, sermon gems or whatever it may be. But I'm just wondering if we are going to post, how should we post? And I guess the question is, and perhaps this is a broader question of how we do everything for the glory of God. If we are making an Instagram post, does it have to glorify God? Is that something that I have to think about? Or can that just be a small thing that I do, just a small hobby maybe? Or does even my post have to glorify God? And how do I do that?
Yeah, I mean, I had this conversation with a bunch of pastors that I have fellowship with. And then we did have this conversation. I think we all landed on slightly different places, but
Uh-huh.
I'll just tell you what I shared. I think you have influence within your circle. So your friends that watch your page or
Right.
follow you on Insta,
Right.
those are the people you have influence with. You can share these things with them. Something like what my wife says. The things that she posts are for her friends. And so, that's why she keeps her page private and she only accepts people that she's close with or knows, right?
Right.
And so she wants to share certain things with her friends. That could be one thing, but you have influence to a degree. I don't know if you should. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you should have this influence. You may, be harmful. It may be harmful that you have this influence. It could be. It's something that you should think about. But you shouldn't just post anything just because it's funny or you think it's good. I think you should sit down and think about it. Why am I posting this? Even if it's a funny picture of your baby or funny picture of Sam falling down the stairs, it's like, who is this going to edify? Who is this going to benefit?
Yeah.
If it's my close circle of friends, then that's great. If I want it viral, then I really need to ask myself, why do I want to make it viral, right?
Yep,
Is it
yep.
to make 20 bucks? Things like that.
Yeah.
Is it for recognition? And I'm not judging. I'm saying if you are doing this, you need to think about it. And if you're not thinking about it, then think about it starting now.
Yeah.
Because if you're not thinking about it, soon you will be sucked into the whole thing about putting the cart before the horse. Now you call yourself an influencer, but really you're just being dragged. And to where you're gonna get dragged, you don't even know because you have nothing of content. You're just producing whatever you think people want to see, right? And then you'll be driven by likes and follows or shares, right? And so that's the dangerous part. So I do think that you need to pray over what you share, especially if it's to your friends. And, if you were like Sam, before you even give that little sermonette on Saturday, don't you pray because of the people that will listen?
Right.
If that was the case, and then let's say your friend circle is 3,000 people. 3,000 people are going to glance at what you're going to say for 5 seconds or 30 seconds. Wouldn't you pray about that? Right?
Yeah.
Those are things I hope that people will consider when they post.
And I just want to say, I'm not being a hater. I want to preface this next statement by saying that. But I just want to say, posting whatever you want to post and then captioning it with a Bible verse does not offset each other. I just need to say that. No, because there are so many times where people will post literally whatever they want. They're on vacation, and then they post a Bible verse. It doesn't offset it, just like you living in your sinful life and having a Bible verse tattoo does not offset it. It doesn't. I don't know what were we talking about? But yeah, I just wanted to say that because I people do that. People post stuff and they add a Christian message and feel like it's all hunky dory, and they think it's hunky dory, but it's not. There needs to be a lot of thought and prayer involved. But I do have a question, and I think people are split on this. When people post their devotions, I've heard both sides of the spectrum on this. People say it encourages other people. Other people say you are being a spiritual. What's that thing when you brag about the spiritual things that you're doing?
Bragger.
You're being a spiritual bragger. Yeah.
Boaster.
A boaster. One who boasts. So I guess where do you land on that? And I understand people may differ, but I'm just curious to what you think about, posting devotions, posting Bible verses, stuff like that.
An egoist.
Oh,
egotist. No?
I don't know what that.
A gas con.
I don't know what that
I don't know, man. I mean, people posting. I saw Ligon Duncan do that for a while. He stopped.
Okay.
Yeah, he would read a devotion and be so blessed. He would highlight some of the portions that he read.
Yeah.
And put it on his media, and people were blessed by that.
Yeah.
People want to know what certain people are reading.
Right.
So I suppose it could be good. It really depends on the heart that you share it in.
So.
And maybe you thought this was so good, and maybe you want to share it with the world. And as you share it, you find out there are more effective means of sharing it, so that you start like editing that picture of your devotion to highlight or draw a red arrow.
Right.
Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people can do that. I don't see anything necessarily wrong unless you do it with the wrong heart.
I think, even just what you just said, if you have to check your heart as you're posting Bible verses in your devotions, how much more should we check our heart when we're posting pictures of our vacation or posting other pictures that, we want our friends to see? So I guess, rule of thumb, heart matters. Please pray before you post. Oh, pray before you post. That should be a thing. Pray.
PBYP. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
What about, how would you answer, Sam, since you want to talk a lot today?
I do.
Someone that says, I don't want to think about all this. this is just too much. I just want to post stuff
Yeah.
that I think is fun. What's wrong with that?
So that what's really funny is actually, I was going to ask you that question actually.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a lie.
No, really.
You're
So
about to say, thank you for listening to the Dear Church podcast.
no, I think see, I think that's why I even brought up the topic of the broad general topic of glorifying God and everything that you're doing. Westminster Shorter Catechism #1. I really don't know. I think, even asking like, hey, I want to watch a TV show. Does my watching the TV show have to be glorifying to God? Or can it just be a restful hobby that I do? How would we even answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people really want. They just
Yeah.
want to turn off
Right.
for a certain time and relax.
Yeah.
And they don't think turning off is reading the Bible. They don't think, resting and thinking about godly things is turning off.
Yep.
They think I need to watch something secular or absorb just mindless stuff or without discerning what kind of agenda there is restful. And that's what I want to give pushback to. I want to share that the world has an agenda,
Yeah.
and it's not the Christian agenda. And the more we placate to it, the more we give into it, just go, why can't I just do this?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually will be, why can't I just consume pornography? It's just this. Why can't I just consume gore over and over again in movies? It's
Yeah.
just relaxing, that kind of thing. We are trending toward something. It's either going to be God or something away from God, right?
Uh-huh.
So we want to continue to trend and move toward God, and that is the basic premise of the Reformed person.
So I guess, we talked about this before, but even in the things that we consume, what we view, the comments, the time management, the time stewardship, how do we use this tool to be glorifying to God?
Yeah, I mean, I think continuing on with that topic, it's stay alert.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't let your guard down.
Yep.
We're not in a place of peace yet. We're in the spiritual battle. Is my point, right?
Yeah.
And if we are in the spiritual battle, then you're not just going to walk out into the middle of gunfire without being fully equipped, right?
Right.
So now is the time to stay vigilant and stay alert. And so if you do that, I think it'll help a lot. If you do it prayerfully, that's part of it. And if we're going to start posting, imagine if people spent just an extra few seconds on just thinking and discerning about this, whatever they're going to post being holy or not, how much less media we would see, right?
Yeah.
Especially from our church folk, right? And how much of a blessing it would be.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if I just look at, the stuff that I see, it's maybe 90% of the stuff isn't really useful or helpful.
Yeah.
But that 10% you have to mine through and dig through.
Right.
But if other people did it, then that would be even helpful for me as somebody consuming media, right? And so
Yeah.
thinking about that, you want to do what is most helpful to the person viewing and consuming if you're going to post something. So pray about it. And perhaps you can even, in your smaller group or accountability group or whatever you're in, you can ask people, like, what do you think about my posts?
Yeah.
Has it been helpful?
Yeah.
This is something that people don't do at all, right?
Right.
When's the last time you saw someone go, how do you like my post these days? You just
Yeah.
post it, and if there are like 1,000 likes, then that's your validation.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's false. 1,000 likes is not your validation. 1,000 likes can make you go straight to hell. It doesn't matter
Yep.
how many likes you have. So you have trusted brothers and sisters. Why don't you ask them
Mhm.
and see if your posting and your things have been good? I think even for our podcast, people give us honest feedback.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, people. Sometimes you get stressed. Let's
No.
be real.
No.
Sometimes, look, if you're listening to this and you have given Sam harsh feedback, he can't eat the whole day.
No,
all right?
I eat a
just
lot.
know that if you give him feedback, do it in a gentle manner because he's such a gentle soul. Anyway, but people give us honest feedback, and that has been helpful to us, right? Sometimes we wish people could do it in a, you know,
Yeah.
nicer way, but it's better than getting no feedback. And
Yeah.
just because you get likes doesn't mean our podcast is good, right? It's the same way. Just because your post gets likes is not a validation or affirmation of the goodness of the post.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, ask your brothers and sisters, ask people that who you trust in Christ to help you, navigate your consumption and your posting.
Yeah. And if you do want to comment on our podcast, please do it via a 5-star review. Those seem to be the most helpful to me. So if you'd like to do that, no pressure.
It would lift up his soft heart.
I think we hit 11.
We did. We
Yeah.
got more because that's
We
awesome.
had 11, but
Yeah.
so I mean, what about I guess addiction to social media, which is a real thing now?
Mm.
Time management, time stewardship in regards to social media. What is the best God honoring way that we can use this in this regard?
Yeah, just shut it off.
Mm.
Cold turkey.
Oh,
Yeah, just shut it off. And if you come back, let's say like you did, you just deleted it from your
home screen.
phone home screen. But when you come back with a plan.
Yeah.
You don't just get away for a week and then come back and just everything goes back to normal.
Yeah.
Come back with a plan.
I mean,
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, so I learned this pro tip, like this life hack. If you delete your social media apps from your home screen, you can't access it unless you go scroll all the way to the right. And so if you need it, you can access it, but you won't mindlessly be clicking it, which is what I found myself doing. And so it's been really helpful for me to not look at Instagram, and it's been great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there was a time where I used to look at Instagram multiple times a day. And then even for me, just maybe a few minutes a day now, once. That's it. And then, I just get to go through our church's family's Insta stories. But that's
Yeah.
it. That's all I do. And that's it. So you kind of get a day's update on how they're doing.
How the kids are doing.
Yeah, that's it. I think
Yeah.
that's the only reason why it's useful for me.
Speaking of kids, you're making this way too easy for me. Speaking of kids, you kind of did mention it before, but how should we be teaching our kids to use social media? I know that you said, in prayer and deliberation, but, do we just outright ban it like you talked about certain people doing? Do we limit it? Do we filter it? How do we make our kids not reliant on it? How do we teach our kids to use and view this as a tool and not as their life? Because a lot of kids these days just are so reliant and dependent on social media.
Yeah, I mean, we know of cases where kids have committed suicide
Yeah.
because of what's happening to them in the virtual world, right?
Yeah.
It's a very sad state of affairs that we're in. I think number one is what parents should be doing in the first place. Number one is you teach your kids. You teach your kids the purpose of life. And then you go down to what social media is, the dangers of it, what you need to watch out for.
Mhm.
And maybe you'll have a kid that's older now that will roll their eyes, but you've done youth group before and you're doing it now. You understand that you have to get to a place where they see you as someone that will teach them about all these areas of life, a broad area of life, right?
Yeah.
Social
Yeah.
media is part of it. So one of the things that parents cannot forego is their authority over their kids, even in their social media life.
Yep.
You
Yep.
still have authority over your child
Yep.
in this area. They are not parent free when they're on social media. And so teach them what social media is about, how they can use it well, what consumption means, and how they'll be changed by what they consume. Teach them what the goal of life is, and that'll point to them consuming certain kinds of media rather than any kind of media that just titillates them or excites them or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And if you do that, then I think that's a good first step. It could be, you could be on my side where you don't want a kid to be exposed to social media at all. Like I said before, tech gurus don't let their kids touch their techs until they're like 16 to 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with social media gurus. They don't let their kids even have a Finsta account
Yeah.
until they're
Yeah.
older,
Yeah.
almost an adult. It's because they know that this medium is so powerful and that you're in such a vulnerable position as a child, as an adolescent, that it's more than likely you will get pulled into the dark side, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I'd rather not you take that chance. There is no pro that will outweigh the heavy cons.
Mm.
And so you could land on that side. But even if you don't and you let your kids use social media, I think it's still your job to teach them about what it is. Have a sit down with them and say, I've done my research. These are the statistics. Statistically speaking, if 1 out of 3 kids are like this, and you have 3 kids, one of you's like this, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you have to know. So if you're gonna let your kids use it, then educate yourself on what it is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, this is a very relevant topic to everybody. And so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at podcast@cgsnj.org. With that being said, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we will be talking about why and how we are to fulfill the Great Commission. Gonna be great. Perhaps we'll even mention 2 kingdom theology. But anywho,
I guess we will now.
we hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears, as always, and until the end of time. We love you. We miss you.
Bye.